Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pilot episode, season one of Histories of Horror. Today, AL and I are going to talk about 6 degrees from horror, social media communities, and true crime. Sometimes the real horror is lurking in the same digital community. To get started, how about you give us a brief introduction on who you are, AL?
My name is A.O. Knuckles. I am a mother of two fur babies. I am the wife of a man that I've been with for 23 years. I've been in the community with Cy for about 2 decades now. Um, we have been doing a lot of things together. She's one of my best friends. We've been writing and ghostwriting and enjoying life.
That sounds like about right. So, in Histories of Horror's premiere episode today, AL and I are exploring a chilling true crime case that hits closer to home than we could have ever expected. I mean, honestly, you don't go into any place expecting something crazy to happen, but this is probably one of the craziest things that have happened in our interconnected lives in the 20 years that we've been friends. What would you say?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that this happened right under our noses to somebody that we actually knew.
Yeah, nearly 20 years ago, AL and I met through a site called Space. It's pretty much defunct now, but it was a mobile social media platform that blended community chats, status threads, and private messaging long before, Discord and some of the more newer DM systems that we have.
Yeah.
So we met there, and of course, we met a lot of different people, and we were mostly frequenters of the chat space, I would say, right? So among the regulars in that chat space that AL and I spent a lot of time in, there were two people that I wouldn't say were exactly our friends, but we knew them because, you're often in these chat rooms, you see different people and their screen names, and if they are often frequenting just like alongside you, you can't help but see it because you're there.
Yeah.
So so two regular users were um mostly a woman called Manxie, and then on occasion there was a dude named Pros, but I do want to emphasize something to the people that might listen to this and were regulars. There were three different people that were called Crow on that site, so this is not Mike.
Right.
I had to say that. Um, this is not Mike anyway. That's all I'm gonna say on that. But with Minxie and Crows, we weren't friends with them, but like I said, we were familiar. And in the year 2011, something just scary and horrible happened. Um, what do you remember about how it started off, Al?
Back in 2011, I remember that everything was dark. The vampirism was very big. Everybody wanted to be a vampire back then, or wanted to be uh, involved with somebody that was a vampire, or they thought they were a vampire. It was just a big craze. I remember back then, when I used to hang out with my two brothers, another Mike and Mike. You remember them, True Vampire, and God, I can't remember his name, but he was a Mike too. Um, they both believed that they were both vampires, and I wanted to be just like them, you know. So it was all the craze back then.
Yeah, and to give some emphasis on that, one of the main digital community spaces that we frequented was the Gothic chat room space.
Yeah.
Um, and there are other things that we will probably touch on as we go on through the podcast series. I will say right now, AL and I have already set up 30 different episodes to get us all the way through next fall on a lineup schedule, and we really are committed to doing this. So, yeah. Um, so we were Gothic space, and like I said, lots of stuff that we could talk about, and especially with the vampire thing. I don't want to take up too much time explaining all of that. I think that that's pretty well, umbrellaed when I say the Gothic space. So, all the things that you're going to find in the Gothic space. Um, so yeah, so we were all there with that commonality. Of course, when it comes to things like True Vampire and that name and the kind of stuff that people were talking about, it wasn't just on like this role play aspect. It was actually on like the Psychic Vampire Codex and some things that are actually really prevalent to what became our now very immersive vampire culture that is what it is now, which exploded, like you said. And so that was going on, okay? But in the midst of the scene that we were in 2011, Minksy and Crow's names became headlines, but not under those names, of course. Their names became headlines because of what occurred that summer. And that was when Tammy Morris, who was Minksy, and Joel Millsap, known as Crows, were implicated in the brutal murder of a 16-year-old boy named Jacob Hendershot in Parker, Florida. And that happened in July 2011. What do you remember about the day? Because something that stands out really a lot to me was one of the first people who let me know what was going on was Yami. And I came into the chat room and actually did bear witness. And I remember going and asking you, and I don't know if you had heard about it before I told you, but I remember going and asking you, did you hear about what's going on with Minxie come in the chat? So what do you remember from that point?
Jacob, or if, what had even
Well,
happened.
to that point, none of us really knew because what I know was Yami had said to me on Facebook, "Hey, Sai, did you hear that Minxie might like got questioned about the disappearance of a 16-year-old boy?" None of us knew that he was dead at that point.
Right.
Um, we just knew that there were rumors going around, and then she came in the chat room going off, like crashing out in front of everybody, and everybody was like, "Hey, come in here, check this out." And I remember that's when I started taking screenshots, and she was talking about how she had been questioned,
Hmm.
and she was going off about everything that had gone on, and like trying to, well, at the same time trying to deny that she had been involved. She was saying all these things about him and about like the rape, the allegations that Stephanie made, which I'll get into in a little bit. But and all these different things that were piling up that really were just fucking weird. Do you remember that?
I remember a little bit of it. I don't think I was online as much during that time, but I remember coming in and seeing her spouting off about how she was raped and things like that.
Yeah, it was, I think it was a pretty wild day that day, and a
Hmm.
few people were like, what's going on with this? And kind of like getting at her. And I remember I was just kind of like, whoa. And I kept watching and I took some screenshots. But anyway, so that happened that day. And all of us were kind of like, okay, this is weird. And so it prompted many of us to go look into the case and start Googling Jacob Hendershot's name, which was the name of the boy, and seeing what the news headlines were. And we would have otherwise not have known had she not come in and started crashing out about it.
Yeah.
And so we were all kind of like, okay, but this is a kid. Like, many of us were parents, you know what I'm saying? And even if we're not, that's something to say about the Gothic community and with true crime and all these different topics we're gonna talk about.
Mm.
The predominant people in the Gothic communities are not like this and would not endorse this and would definitely do what most of us who watched this in horror did, which is try to step in and help connect the dots so that this crime could be resolved.
Of course.
And so that's what most of us in horror found ourselves facing. So rumors began to spread through our shared digital circles. And then with the return to the chat, it was almost like it wasn't quite a full casual confession, but it was so casually discussed
Hmm.
that different screenshots were sent anonymously to the authorities there in Florida. And what we did not know was going on simultaneously was the actual deeper part of this case. This was just the limited lens of scope that we had as people in a shared digital community.
Right.
But what we did know is there was a young woman who was 18 years old by the name of Stephanie Pisty. And this is what tied her to Minxie and Crows, which are Tammy and Joel, as I said. Um, so Stephanie apparently created this elaborate tale, and she was into the goth community, interested. She said that she thought she was a hybrid vampire werewolf. These things are all, of course, in many resources online and across the internet. You can check this. She did an interview discussing it. Anyway, she said she believed all these things, and she happened to encounter Jacob because this is what actually went down. So in the summer of 2011, Jacob Hendershot connected with his mother, whom he had been disconnected from for several years as he was raised by his grandparents until he was a teenager, at the point that he decided he was going to go visit his mother in Florida, and she lived in Parker. And so Jacob traveled from out of state to go visit his mother for the summer. And it so happened that Stephanie Pisty used to babysit for Tammy and Joel because Tammy had two children under the age of 10 and 4. And that is an important reference point in this case. Um, but anyway, so Stephanie would come to the complex to babysit for them. And she happened to notice, this young teenage boy. And like I said, she was 18 years old. So I guess they ended up kind of becoming acquaintances. And she had a boyfriend. His name was William. And they actually did have kind of a sanguinarian relationship from what I've learned from other sources. So they were practicing bloodletting together and forms of BDSM and stuff, but they were young adults, like I think he was like 19 and she was 18. And of course, Jacob was only 16 years old. So she started talking to him, and I guess from what the story goes, is William got a little bit upset and they kind of had this altercation about it at Tammy and Joel's house. And they had another friend who was there whose name was James Gay. And in the midst of all of this, Stephanie, I didn't want William to get upset with her because she was talking to Jacob and it was possibly romantic. So she told him that Jacob had attempted to rape her. And when she told William and all of them that, they were like, "What? Well, let's get this guy." And so they decided to orchestrate an ambush on the 16-year-old boy together. And they had Stephanie have Jacob invited to their apartment, to the guys that they were going to hang out, and it was just going to be her and Jacob. But when Jacob got to the apartment, he was pulled inside, and the person that threw the first punch, I believe, was James Gay. And then from there, William and Joel jumped in to beat the crap out of this 16-year-old boy. And I want you to understand that they were all, I mean, Joel was the oldest, I believe he was 25 at the time. They were all involved. And Stephanie and Tammy were there and they were privy to it, and the children were also present when it happened. And when I say that they beat him, they also got knives and stabbed him, and it was apparently a bloody massacre. And then afterwards, they were in the midst of having this young man's body, and they didn't know what to do with it, so they immediately started thinking, and across the, I guess it was like across the parking lot from the apartment complex they lived at, there was a construction site, and there was a big drain tube, like for the drainage culvert that they were going to put over. And so they wrapped him up and they stashed him in the culvert. And then the two women together cleaned up the mess while the children watched. Is that the story you remember?
Yeah, I remember that part. Um, the girls said that they were cleaning up the house from where the men had literally just beaten the snot out of him. And they were cleaning up the blood while the men went to go hide the body in the canal.
Yeah, and then it gets even darker from there. In that, so now his mother was looking for him because Jacob was disappeared. And um, after they lured and ambushed and then murdered him right beside the apartment complex where he was visiting his mother in the first time in years, they stashed him and proceeded to taunt her. And I think that that was one of the worst parts. So she's had this, called the authorities, she's put in a missing persons report, and these things all happen. And then it led to that day where Tammy was questioned about his disappearance. And then she came into the chat losing her crap. And those screenshots that we took, because we were all like, whoa, what's this? Were then sent to the authorities. And at the time that was happening, Stephanie Pisty was on Facebook making post after post after post that were odd and suspicious, which helped lead them to, continue questioning that pathway. And them finding out after a month of Jacob being missing that he had been stashed and was there, right there across the parking lot the whole time.
Hmm.
I just can't get over haunting his mother like that.
Yeah, I don't know why they would torture her like that. She didn't deserve any of it.
Yeah,
I mean, neither did he, but his mom really didn't deserve any of that torture that they try to do.
yeah. And so basically, what we're trying to focus here, not only on giving respect to Jacob, because it's been 14 years since he passed now, this month, July of 2011, but also how digital communities can serve as mirrors, masks, sometimes even monsters, because how close to horror are we really every time we're scrolling? Honestly, sometimes it's just 6 degrees away, as you can see with what happened with us, right?
Hmm. Exactly.
So, I know that as a result of that, Tammy had been questioned and then she was arrested and then she was released and then she was retained again, because she had went on Moco again and started posting more about it after they had found the body. And so in the end, though, this happening in Parker, Florida, she was only serviced, I mean, she was only sentenced to 3 years, and she served that and evidently has been out on parole for quite a while now. However, Stephanie got accessory to murder and 12 years. So I believe that from 2012 was when she began, so I'm pretty sure that she also served her sentence in full. I do think that was another kind of a miscarriage of justice, though, because this young woman later admitted that she had lied and fabricated the story about the alleged rape, that he had never done any of that, and she was just trying to avoid her boyfriend getting mad at her for basically being a two-timer.
Yeah.
Um, so, listen to how that goes. Boyfriend ended up getting second-degree murder because he was second to do the most damage to Jacob alongside Joel. He got 25 years because of that girl's lie. He's obviously still serving, and, you know, it's been a little while, like I said, since about 2012, so we're looking at about 13 years or so served at this point, but that's, almost half the time that he was sentenced to, and, these people are in their 30s now, they did this and they're weren't even 20 years old, you know what I mean? Some of them. So, Joel also got 25 years for second degree and is also still serving. And finally, James Day was sentenced to aggravated battery with intent to harm and has been serving a 15-year sentence. So he's got about 2.5 years left before he's going to be out on that. But that will leave William and Joel, who honestly should have been. I mean, I don't know. I still can't wrap my mind around why Tammy and Joel allowed that to happen in front of children with these kids in
Mhm.
their apartment. It's wild to me.
Exactly. I just don't. It it's baffling.
And to think that many of them already out back on the streets, it's like they could do something so horrible and so grisly. And yeah, William and Joel got a long time and that's due them, but I feel like the women should have gotten an equal amount of time to James A.
I agree. They should have. They no matter how much of the murder that they committed, they were still there. They still witnessed it. They were still a part of it. They still planned it. They still should have gotten equal time, just like the men.
Yeah, I will never understand how that happened, and um, the the men are the only ones still in prison for this right now, and I know that they did, were the initial ones to really ambush him, but Stephanie lied and she set a trap for someone who was innocent, and then
Mhm.
afterwards she taunted his mother. And the part about Tammy that gets me the most is she was a mother.
Yeah,
I can't. So that really, I think it really started to open our eyes to the realities of how culty some of these communities can become.
a character to where we could become somebody else. And I think that with them, they took their characters probably too far into their reality. And when I heard about all of this, it made me take a step back and say, "Whoa, you know, what's really going on in this world?"
Right. And at that point, I mean, it kind of really, I was already going to school, um, but I really dove into what I was going to do for a career and take those concepts and those ideas that we were having fun with in a way that would be more productive and less toxic.
Right.
And so, like, we collaborated on a story that was in an anthology. Things have been done that showed how we could use those creative desires and interests to build something and it stand out as how those communities can be good. Well, not everybody is like that because oftentimes we hear about like associated true crime role play communities and like Dungeon and Dragon murders, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And those things did happen. And it's not to discount that, but it's honestly, most people, like, if you look at the fact that we just lost Ozzy Osbourne, for example,
Yeah.
a lot of artists and creatives been coming out talking about that and the influence that had on their life, and it most of these people are very loving and kind people, humanitarian, and yeah, they might look edgy on the outside, but a lot of them are just eccentric, and they're vocal and they're outspoken and they're your autistic people and they're your ADHD outcasts that are just looking to bring their interest in art and community together somewhere where they won't feel like they're, you know, really weird for that. And then all these kind of predatory people come in, or even people that are infield in a mental health way, and they take on this persona, and it becomes more than just this on-screen writing a story or collaborating with another person for fun, and they carry it over into their real world space in a way that causes them a lot of problems or results in the worst case a tragedy. So what do you think, this many years later, on how the community
What do I think this many years later was?
reacted to this news?
Well, I don't know that the community acted a lot. I mean, I know for at least the first year, um, nobody could believe what had happened. We were all in awe. All these years later, I don't know that anybody still, I feel like that Mimsy and Crows or, Tammy and Joel have mostly been forgotten. Um, yeah, they did a horrible thing. I still don't think that the girls should have been let go as easily as they did, especially with Stephanie lying and then taunting the mom and dragging everything out. She definitely shouldn't have been let out, or, Tammy with everything that she had done, but it is what it is, and we can't change, what Florida laws or Florida judges say. But the community, I feel like the community would agree. What do you think? Do you think the community would be the same way?
I think that most of the people that have heard about it, and it does get brought up sometimes. I know that still because I've I've seen a few people from there and talked to them, and had, I think a couple of years ago actually, there were some younger people around my daughter's age that were like, "Wasn't there a murder associated with that chat room?" And I was in the presence of other people, and I was like, "Yeah, actually." They're like, "What do you mean? What do you know about it?" And I was like, "Well, I was one of the people that was in the chat room the day she had to crash out."
Yeah.
Well, I got asked the other day because, and I wanted to bring this up too. With the anthology that we did, the story that AL and I wrote together was called Snowden. I mean, it was in the anthology called Snowden, and our story was Frosted Dreams. Excuse me. Um, but that was orchestrated by a colleague of ours, and she has a podcast that's been going on for a few weeks now called DBS, and Deep Dark South, I believe it is. And I was briefly discussing what we were about to do with bringing Histories of Horror out here, and she was like, "It'd be cool if we could maybe do some cross promo." And I was talking about guest spotting. But anyway, and explained to her a little bit about the Hendershot case, because it took place in Florida, and I know she's doing, the deep dark South, so that's in the South, that she might not have known about this, and it's called the vampire, werewolf hybrid murder. They sometimes in some episodes of true crime, because like it was like an ID discovery, they call it a cult. I don't really know that I could say that they were a cult. There were only 5 people, but they did have some cult-like mentality.
Yeah, to me, it sounded like they were trying to start their own cult and create it to where they were the leaders and such. But I mean, like, to the outside world, it could even look like, they were trying to be more than what they needed to be. Like, to other people, it could look like they were trying to start their own vampire thing, and they were just, to me, it was just they were trying too hard. They wanted to try to be something that they weren't, and this was the way
Yeah,
to,
I don't think that they had the charismatic lead.
yeah.
So it essentially was just like they kind of lost, their traction on that. And they just decided to go for the most extreme reaction. But yeah, so I she asked me, the podcast host of DDS, she goes, "How are you guys in proximity to this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know that's kind of a weird thing to say. I was privy to someone who was an accomplice to a murder losing their shit in a online chat space, but it happens, man."
Some people just don't stay mentally stable after they commit murder or assist in murder, as the judge said. And I believe that's why she was losing her shit in the chat. But it's what helped got her caught.
Yeah, and that's like really, I think that you were made a good point when you said I think most people were shocked and their reaction to it was, I mean, there's only so much that I can do, but I gave the evidence and that helped at least, bring this much closure to this mother who none of us knew, but could you just imagine? I just
Yeah, this was something that I could never imagine that somebody that I'd seen in a chat room every day for at least a year would, you know, stoop to doing.
Yeah, that's one thing to point out too. They were not like at that point, AL and I had already been part of that community since the first day that chat room opened, basically. Uh, but she was her, like I said, Crows didn't come on there often, and she was on there like every day for like a year, but it wasn't. She made herself really well known in that time, and she befriended several people that we knew, but she was never in any of our direct friend circles. She was just kind of there in the chat room, and it was about a year that she was there. But I heard that after she got out, she briefly did make an appearance back there, but I wasn't involved then.
Yeah, since I came back to Moko, I went back about a year ago, and I mean, I go on off and on just to talk to people that I don't talk to on Discord. I mean, like, I haven't seen her. I haven't even checked to see if her name is active. Her old Mimsy name. I'm assuming with them being able to change their usernames now every 30 days that she probably has another name, but I haven't seen her active since then.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know that I had a couple years back seen some people talking about it, and um, I was like, yeah, that did happen. It's been, you know, at that point it had been like closer to a decade because it's been a minute since that happened. But yeah, Jacob's story though is widely available on a few different places. I found and shared a list of resources that people can check out on my various different little platforms that are out there. But some of the 6 degrees from horror, social media communities, and true crime reference resource citations include an episode called Killing Kids, Good versus Evil, season 4, episode 7, um, Good versus Evil and the Good Son. It covers the murder of Jacob Hendershot and the psychological profile of each of the offenders. There is also a Patreon podcast called True Crime All the Time, and they have an exclusive called The Murder of Jacob Hendershot. There is a true crime blog known as Archive Bonnie's Blog of Crime. She's got Jacob Hendershot on there, and there's several different resources, including the mugshots of each of the perpetrators. There is a YouTube video on the Jacob Hendershot case that I shared. Um, an episode of Death Walks with Us called Jacob Hendershot's Senseless Murder. And then again, a couple of more documentaries. Dark Temptations, Hollywood Bondage, Bloodthirsty. Season 1, Episode 3 is called Hollywood Bondage, Bloodthirsty, and Stephanie Pisty and the Jacob Hendershot case is featured on that one. One that I watched and actually really found to be pretty insightful is a Murder Among Friends episode called Unholy Friends. That was season 1, episode 10. And it is, a very in-depth good one that I think gives a lot of insight into some of the ways that Stephanie was more and kind of like how she was able to entice Jacob and more about their friendship as it was opposed to the other people that actually did more of the assaulting for her. And, remember, you and I were actually talking about something that I think is interesting here to interject. Just the other day, we were talking about Charles Manson, remember?
Right.
Do you remember what I said to you?
That Charles Manson was uh, convicted for all of the murders, except he never committed anything. He only got he only convinced people to do the bidding for him.
Yes, and if you look at the Sharon Tate murders and, everything that happened up there, Charles convinced people and he was very charismatic to do those things, but he didn't actually go in and do any of them himself. And so I that's something that really stood out to me between the difference between California and their sense of justice and Florida's, because Charles Manson was put away for life just for giving them the thought to do that.
Hmm.
And think about this, Stephanie Pisty is the mastermind here, and she only got 12 years.
Right. And
Where
that's what I was talking about the other day. I don't understand why both of those girls, they got such light sentences, but yet they helped figure out everything that needed to be done. However, they weren't the ones that pulled the last blows. And yet they got such short sentences. It does not make sense.
it's very scary because when you see that there are people like that who can convince other people to do such horrible, atrocious, terrible things uh, that not only take away the life of a 16-year-old boy, but also in, they influence them, all of these men, to do a thing to somebody who was innocent and give up their life to being incarcerated for it.
Yeah.
And both of these women are on the streets now.
And that's something you have to think about is because now that they're back on the streets, they know that they can get away with things. They know that they'll get a lighter sentence, and they people know that their mouths can convince them to do just about anything. And yet they're back out on the street.
Because somebody else is going to be the ultimate fall person. And that's, it's scary what those guys did, and they deserve every bit of their sentence. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But when people have the ability to influence others in such a way and they are so methodical about it,
Hmm.
that scares me. And again, I'm not any mental health specialist. I can't diagnose anybody, so don't get me wrong, no diagnostics.
Hmm.
But that does show me some red flags to consider. Is this person sociopathic? Are they, a narcissist? Are they a psychopath? Something is definitely awry, and you had to realize that, especially when you're going into digital community spaces. Um, and I think that goes for any type, whether you are attracted to the Gothic or not. These kinds of things, especially if you follow true crime as a constant, you'll start to see. and you can't help it. You start to see the pattern recognition of how this herd mentality works off of one person and being able to say a thing and then get all these people to just rabidly respect.
Right.
So, yeah, I guess that brings us to the end of our pilot episode for Histories of Horror. Our next episode, we are going to be taking a path down AL's avenue of episodes because we each have decided that what we're going to do here is basically we started out on this one to get a common ground, but it's going to be one episode. Again, we're going to do this bi-weekly. Is going to be from a list of AL's curated episodes, and the other is going to be from me. And I know one that I'm really excited about talking about with you is Waverly Hills
Yes.
because haven't you been?
Yeah, it was a great experience to actually be in the presence of the big building that used to house so many people that were either what they called mentally insane or just sick. And then experiencing everything I did with my now parted friend Lisa, it was an experience and a half.
Yeah, Lisa was a pretty interesting personality. I remember I did a podcast with AL and Lisa both a few years ago, and it's been a hot minute, but she passed away, and so
Yeah.
rest her soul. Our next episode is going to be August the 10th, and AL and I are going to discuss Waverly Hills. I did want to say in the future, coming up in September, we're going to discuss a place that I've been, which kind of made me excited that it's a topic that AL actually picked, but it's a place that I've visited more than once, and that is the Lollery Mansion. So, like I said, we got um, several interesting cases and locations to discuss, and we're looking forward to this being a wonderful season. And this is the launch today with 30 episodes outlined through September the 6th, 2026, and we are really incredibly excited. Like I said earlier, we are probably going to be doing some kind of cross promo and maybe guest spotting with the host of DDS at some point. So if you haven't already, check out their podcast and let your friends know because we're all here to talk about, those interesting little stories that lead to our history and how horrifying and shocking some of those might be, but how important it is that we retain an honest scope looking at what has happened in the world. Well, do you have any final thoughts for us, Anne? I would like to hear, your closing out statement.
Um, well, I don't really know of anything to say other than thank you for coming to listen to us. I hope you enjoyed this first episode as much as we enjoyed making it, and we hope you come back to listen to some more of us.
Right, awesome. I'm really eager to hear you talk a lot more in episode 2 because I'm going to hand over most of the reins to you since you've been to Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky and I have not,
Yeah,
but I'm super stoked to hear what you got to share with us.
yeah, I can't wait. It's gonna be fun.
All right. Well, it's great to chat with you as always, bestie. We will follow up with this shortly and looking forward to hearing more on Waverly Hills. To the audience, thank you for tuning in with us today. That is the pilot episode for Histories of Horror. Tune in next time.